Hello, this is Idodmg and welcome back to the channel. In this last Epoch video, I want to talk to you about my Void Hammer build that I've been running in Season 2. This is a complete overhaul of my last Void Hammer video, and I've had loads of super valuable feedback from the commenters on the last Void Hammer video, and as well as the Hack and Slash Hub Discord community. Make sure you check them out for everything action RPG. I'll have a link to their Discord down below. Big shout out to everyone that has helped me out along the way with molding and overhauling and really tuning this build. Let's go ahead and jump in and talk about the build's capabilities. And I'm also going to break down the build very in depth here, so I apologize if it's a longer video, but I will have the timestamps down below. We're going to go through everything from skills, passives. I even want to break down each individual item slot and give you different options that are available to you and go over everything that I've tested while min-maxing this build. First thing you should know about this build is it is pretty fun. We're going to be using Hammer Throw, and we're going to be scaling the entire build around the Disintegrating Aura skill node on the Hammer Throw skill tree. We're going to be doing void damage, throwing attack speed, and so much more. It really is fun just to have this mass amount of hammers swirling around you, echoing, dealing damage, following you around as you mow down mobs. Now, I don't want to sugarcoat this for you. This build is probably not going to be an uber Aberoth contender. Perhaps if you have better luck than I with some of the gear drops we're going to talk about, maybe you can get it down, but I really don't think so. The highest corruption I've gotten to is a little over 900 corruption, and it really slowed down. I would say anywhere from up to about 500 corruption is just an absolute breeze. And then up until about 750 corruption, it's decent, it's okay, you might die a little bit. But right as soon as I hit 750 corruption, I had to go back and really start min-maxing a lot more of my gear slots and rolls and everything that we're going to talk about. But yeah, once 750 corruption hit, I had to actually pay attention, like dodge AoEs and stuff. It was kind of weird, but that is just so you know up front. And then pushing that 750 to 900 was really a true grind. And I feel like I've probably peaked around the 900, whatever I'm at in the game so far. Went ahead and jumped into the game here. Let's first things first kick it off with Hammer Throw. So this ability, of course, is going to be where we're getting our main source of damage from, and what we're scaling the build around here is the Disintegrating Aura. This is going to give it so your hammers have an aura around them that's going to cause enemies to take void damage over time. Now, in here, you can see what it actually scales off of. It'll scale off your increased void damage, damage over time, and throwing attack damage. Now, this is where it gets a little bit weird, and I've actually tested this. It does not scale with other nodes on this tree unless specifically stated otherwise. And then the area scaling, whatever. Now, the thing down here is weighted hammers. It seems like from my testing, this does actually scale that aura, even though it says it doesn't. So I don't know if that's a bug or what's up with it, but it does seem to scale. That's why we took the 5 out of 5 here. You do have to get 3 in weighted hammers in order to unlock the Disintegrating Aura, but let's backstep here. When you very first unlock hammers and you're leveling up your character, you're going to want to go up for winged hammers. You're going to want to get your steadfast path, but this is all to get over here to make your hammer spiral and then actually orbit you. Now, a lot of this is going to be increasing the mana cost, and we have a really cool trick that we're going to talk about here in a little bit that I learned with managing your mana and stuff. We're also going to go over here for Catapult for more projectiles. You can see that increased mana cost there as well. But down here on Ballista, we kind of negate that whole mana cost here almost with this, and it also does more damage. So this is pretty much the tree I ran, and then you go over here to get your Disintegrating Aura damage. Now, one thing you could do, and I kind of played around a little bit with, is you could take 2 points out of here and maybe 1 out of here if you're okay on mana. And you can go down here to Guardian Zeal, and this is going to give you global increased damage, so not more damage, but increased, and then crit, which we do not use crit for this build as it is a damage over time build. I felt like the 20 to 30% increased damage really wasn't worth it, seeing as how this actually does scale up our aura, and it is more, which is a multiplier instead of your increased. So that's it for Hammer Throw. Let's go ahead and talk about Symbols of Hope here. Now, we're actually going to convert these into Symbols of Despair. Now, this ability is all about having a passive buff to bolster up that Disintegrating Aura effect. Now, what this is going to do is you can come over here and you can get increased damage per symbol, per active symbol. That's important. Then you can get fire damage, which we don't use fire damage, so that's why we convert it over to void damage. Now, this is, again, per symbol, we're getting these bonuses. Now, over here, we're going to grab Endurance Threshold. This is really Endurance Threshold is really important in my eyes, especially for this build. I'm still trying to up it. I'm about 300 short, I think, from where I want to be. but it's pretty good. Now, we're not going to go a full 5 out of 5 because there's other more important nodes here. This one's going to give your gain rate, because the way that this ability works is if you actually use the ability, you're going to get 5% less damage taken per ward for 3 seconds. So this is kind of like, I'm about to die, let's try to stay alive here, and you want to get those symbols back real quick. We're also going to grab the cooldown reduction here. We're not taking this for the cooldown, we're taking it instead to get up here to get another max symbol. You can have up to 4 symbols now, so you're getting more of those buffs. Now it gets even more awesome over here. You're going to get block chance per active symbol. If you can do the math there, that's 12% more block chance. That's really crazy. This build we're going to be block chance capped with. That's pretty much going to be it for your Symbols of Hope. There's really not anything else on here that I would recommend taking. Maybe if you feel like you get enough gain and you want like another little bit more endurance threshold, you could do something like that. But yeah, you definitely want to get that extra symbol here. And I know down here on the bottom left, you can get another max symbol. It just felt like too much of a point investment to be able to pull that off. So that's how I handled Symbols of Hope, or Symbols of Despair, rather. Next up, we have Devouring Orb. Now, this one is very important, and the cool thing about this one is you don't actually ever have to cast it. It just happens while you move, thanks to this node down here. So what's going to happen is you're going to get the orb to orbit you. It can cast when you move, and then you can get void damage on impact. I'm still kind of messing around with this. I feel like this one's probably not as good. And actually, in fact, I need to rework this tree. I guess I haven't done that yet. But you need to go take the 2 out of here and the 1 out of here and put those 3 to get 5 out of 5 Void Adept. Again, I don't know why I haven't done that in game. I know I have it updated like that in the planner. But basically what this is going to do is so Devouring Orb is a spell, and we're not really scaling spell damage in this build. So this one is really there, again, to bolster up the damage of our Disintegrating Aura, a common theme in this build, obviously. Void Adept is going to give you more global void damage and mana regen. The mana regen is not that great. And also the double bonus at 90 vitality is too much of a stretch, and I was not actually able to get that much vitality and still have the build working as I want it to. After that, you're going to come up here and you're going to want to grab Void Essence. And we're going to talk about this here in a minute. This is part of the trick for your mana. But before I get to that, I want to go ahead and point out this node over here. These are basically just travel nodes. You're going to be able to get up here to your Void Resistance Shred Chance. This is great. This is going to buff up your aura even more. Now, the thing with Void Knight is they have a really cool passive here. And we'll talk more in depth in the passive tree later. But over here, you can get it's called Void Well. And it only requires basically a 2-point, it's a 1-point node, but you have to get the 1 travel node. So basically it's a 2-point investment. But when you have 3 or more Void Essences, if you drop below 0 mana, you will consume the 3 Void Essences and set your mana to 30% of your total mana pool. And this can happen every 3 seconds. So basically what that means is as long as you can have enough mana for 3 seconds, every 3 seconds when you completely run out, you will get your mana pool back by consuming those 3 essences. I don't even know if I can run out of mana. There we go. You can see it kind of bump up. And then you can do your 3 seconds, and it just happens over and over again. Now, this is why I'm pointing this out. So in this tree, we are getting Void Essences from this node. Now, we get a Void Essence whenever a Devouring Orb expires. Now, in this tree, you can make these Devouring Orbs last longer, which we don't want, because we want them to expire as quick as possible so that we can always have 3 of the Void Essences on hand, right? So we can consume it for that mana. So the way you pull that off is you come down here for Cataclysm, and what this is going to do is when it ends, it's going to create a Void Eruption. Not that great, but what we're looking at here is that duration. 40% less duration is amazing. And then you can come down here for cooldown recovery speed, which, I mean, I probably don't even need that, really. I think there wasn't really much else I really felt like putting points into. But without Cataclysm, it's actually, in order to get 3 Void Essences back without that, takes like 5.5 seconds. I actually did test this. Now, if you take Cataclysm, you'll be within that 3-second window. And this is great, because then you don't need to worry about your mana regen. But what you will have to worry about is getting the cost reduction on your rings. And again, we'll cover every single gear slot later in the video. Next up, we have the skill called Anomoly. Now, this one has, I think this is like, works in every build. It's a really popular pick here. But this is what gives you that time bubble that once you spec into it far enough, the bubble will follow you around, providing a bunch of buffs. And here's the buffs you can get from this time bubble right here. You can get slow, which is directly tied into your passive skill tree over on the Void Knight right here with singular purpose. You get 5% less damage taken from slowed enemies. So you always want to have all the enemies slowed possible, right? Back to Anomoly though, you're going to be getting that slow. You're also going to be getting void resistant shred stacks. You're going to get 2 stacks per second. And then you're going to come up here and then you really only need 2 points into leech for both of these here. I wouldn't go the full 4. Just felt like overkill. Like at a certain point, it was like, I have way too much leech. Let's kind of scale this around. But if you feel like, no, I need the extra leech, then you totally could. That's the cool thing about this build is like, play around with it and tweak with what you want and try different things out. That's what I really have had the most fun with on this build. And then we're going to grab this node down here so that when they leave the time bubble for 2 more seconds, we will get that void resistant shred. Now here's another interesting part of this ability here. I know I like the immediacy node. This makes it just happen literally immediately instead of having to send them forward in time and then bringing them back. It just happens instantly. Because what this ability does is when you cast it, like I said, you send enemies forward in time by 5 seconds. Then when you use this skill again, it'll bring them back to your timeline early. Now, that's important to know because you're not just going for the time bubble. You can also give yourself a pretty good damage buff as well with this ability. So you're going to be down here is what we're talking about, Mark of Rot. So when enemies return to the present, they take increased void damage for a certain duration. It's 1 second per point that we put in here, so we're going to go a full 5 points. So that means when you're casting Anomoly, don't just cast it for the bubble. Make sure you're targeting the big monster you're fighting or whatever it is you're fighting so that they take that 50% increased void damage for the 5 seconds. It's kind of a cool trick that I didn't notice till a little bit later on, so just keep that in mind when you're using Anomoly. Now the final skill in this one I did quite extensive testing with actually, so the skill I choose is Abyssal Echoes. Now if you look at other Void Hammer type builds that are similar to this build, I didn't see any of them. I looked at a few of them. I don't remember which ones or whatever, but none of them used Abyssal Echoes. Now let's go ahead and take a step back here and show kind of an option that you can choose, and we'll talk about what I did to test it. So over here on Abros Command, this is going to be the main weapon you're going to be using for this build. You can see down here, Void Cleave is now instant, and it is no longer a movement skill. It's going to have no weapon requirement, and you're also going to get this Ravaging Aura that will last extra long and void penetration, and it sounds really cool, and it is. It's decent. I recommend you check it out for yourself instead of just taking my word for it. Check out Void Cleave, and you'll see what I'm talking about here. So if you go down to your Ravaging Aura, you can see right down here, and then it's basically going to be a damage over time aura, which, you know, would work for our build. You can scale the area. You can also get some leech on it and stuff like that. Now, I tried this, and I can't tell you the exact skill layout I had because I've since forgotten about it, but the Void Cleave, when I did test it out, the damage ticks from the aura were just significantly less than the actual buff that you can get from nether coating in the Abyssal Echoes skill tree. So this is where I go with this Abyssal Echoes, and this one was a big shout out. I want to thank you, Diffy, on the Hack and Slash Hub for pointing this buff out to me. This is really awesome. Make sure you take it. So the only downfall on this one is it does have a little bit of a cast time, but it's like a split second. It's not that big of an issue. So the big thing here is you want to come down for this buff, Nether Coating. It's a 5-second long buff. It's going to give you increased attack speeds. That's going to make it so you can get more hammers out more quickly. And then you're also going to get more damage to blinded enemies. Now it's 20% more. And remember, that's a multiplier. It's different than increased. And then we grabbed the time rot chance, not such a big deal. That 20% more damage is huge. And when we compared the Ravaging Aura to the actual buff itself, the buff did tick for like 120k more, I think. And since testing, I've actually gotten even better gear, so it's probably even more than that now. But in order to blind enemies, you can come down here and grab this node, just traveled right here, and then Abyssal Decay blinds enemies. And then you're also going to want to get this so that Abyssal Decay will lingers. And then we're also going to grab a little bit more. This one's not as huge, but it's going to make the enemies affected by this Abyssal Decay take an increased amount of damage over time. 24% increased damage over time. It's not huge, but again, it's for that multiplier right there. 20% is great. And then I also grabbed, up here we went at one point into area, but I liked the chains. Being able to make this thing chain around felt great, because oftentimes I would use Abyssal Echoes and like the thing would die and I still had a few seconds left on my nether coating. Now on a, single boss or whatever, not as big of a deal, but for like map clearing, I really liked this. Now, a couple other things to remember here. This buff, that 20% more damage, is only going to apply to blinded enemies. So you want to make sure that you're using this on the monster that you want to be blind, so that you can actually get the benefit of that 20% multiplier there. And another thing you could consider, I didn't go into this, but over here, I believe it's on Paladin, you can get a blind. It just seemed like a pretty big point investment. And I really like the health from this node over here, but you could get more blind chance here as well. Perhaps that's worth taking. But the way I saw it was Abyssal Echoes itself blinds. It lasts for the whole duration of that buff. I don't really need another source of blind. Next up, I want to go ahead and talk about the passive skill trees here. You're going to be a base class Sentinel. Obviously, you're going to get 8 into Juggernaut. I like this one for the resistances. And the strength doesn't really do much for our disintegrating aura, but I like the resistances. Perhaps you could move that around if you wanted to. We grabbed 1 point here just so we could come over here and get 3% block chance from this node. And then I put 5 into here for more armor. And then you also take less damage from nearby enemies. You're pretty, it is a throwing ability, but you're going to be in melee range a lot of the time. So definitely worth it. And then we're going to grab our cooldown, recovery speed. This one was actually for the 30 points of health. Health is incredibly important. It's actually one of the factors that I feel is holding me back currently from pushing to 1,000 corruption plus. And that's really, that's due to I've had really bad luck with gear drops. Over on Forge Guard, we're going to drop 3 points to get the threshold right here for 3 more block chance. Over here on the Paladin, I put in, you gotta have the 15 points. I went with block chance again, another threshold. You only need 3 points there. And then this one, as I said, for the health, but it's really to unlock the Symbols of Hope as well that we talked about already. Over on your Void Knight skill tree, and this was one of the biggest things with the overhaul of the build, was really just how badly I had messed up the passive tree on my old build guide video. And thank you again to everyone that provided feedback and pointed these mistakes out to me. I've learned so much through this journey of Void Knight and the Void Hammer build. So thank you guys for the constructive criticisms. So what you're going to want to do here in the passive trees, you're going to want to grab this. Again, this is another threshold here so that you can get void and physical damage taken. Damage reduction is great in action RPGs, so we want the 5 points for the threshold there. And then talking about survivability and defense nodes over here on Singular Purpose, we touched on this for the slowed enemies, but you can take another 5% less damage from enemies that have Time Rot on them. Now, Time Rot is it's going to be applying all the time from everything that we have in this build. It's really an afterthought, honestly, but you're going to be getting the buff from that. Now, up here, these were your echoes, a little bit of Time Rot chance, and this is going to make it so that you get more chance for your abilities to echo, which is going to play into our gearing that we're going to talk about next. Over here on Time Legion, this is going to give you throwing attack speed, which is huge for this build, as well as echo chance. And then down here, of course, more echo chance and increased armor. Down here, you can grab void damage, movement speed. I like this one. I feel like this one, you could probably play around with this one and move this one around a little bit. But more importantly here, again, for another super huge defensive node, is this one right here, Abyssal Fluctuation. And what this is going to do is it's going to take some of the 50% of the elemental damage you take, you're going to take as void damage instead, which right there on the node, you take 20% less void damage. Up here, void and physical. So you're basically getting 25% damage reduction from void damage, physical damage, but then you're also getting that elemental damage. Well, 50% of it is also going to be applied to that void damage taken reduction as well. So super huge for, I feel like any Void Knight has to take those 1, 2, 3 nodes. I feel like those are just absolutely required. And then we already touched on this one, Essence in the end, and your Void Well. Again, that was for our Void Essence, where if you have 3 stacks and you run out of mana, you consume the 3 stacks of Void Essences. This is what activates that to actually happen so that you can be good on mana. I know we're kind of going backwards in the tree. Let's go ahead and jump here to the beginning. We're going to put just 2 points into void damage, and this is going to be so we can get over to our throwing added damage. Now, a thing to consider in Last Epoch is different abilities scale in different ways. And you can see over here on the disintegrating aura, added damage, which is exactly what that is. Added damage applies to disintegrating aura at 200% effectiveness. So basically you're getting double what this is, right? So basically it's plus 48, at least if I'm doing my math correctly. So super important node there. And then I can't remember if we talked about this one. Okay, so this is where some of your leech is going to come into play, 1 point. And then you want the 6 points for that void damage leeched as health. And you also get 20% increased leech rate. This is probably why we cut back on some of the leech in the other areas. Over here on Dark Maw, you get increased health. Again, health is important. And then you absorb health on kill. This is great for clearing maps. Again, on a long boss fight, not so much unless there's adds you're killing. And again, this one down here is going to be for vitality. And you're going to get the threshold here, where your devouring orb immediately creates a void rift on cast. And I can't remember exactly why I took this one. I know there was a reason to it. But that's pretty much your passive tree. Play around points, as I said, probably this one you could play around with. Oh, I don't think I talked about this one. This one gives you more slow chance is the threshold here. That's why we put 5 into that one. Remember, slow gives us damage reduction. It all just comes together really nice, and the void penetration helps as well. Wow, we've covered a lot here, from the skill trees to the passive trees. I seriously apologize. This video is so long. But let's go ahead and get through the gear here. It's really important to me because I spent a lot of time min-maxing, so I want to cover everything here. And so you have options as well while you're leveling up and trying to check out this build. Some of the important stats here before we jump into actually each slot of gear. You're going to be looking for health, super important. And when it comes to your crit avoidance or crit reduction, there are 2 different stats in the game, but they kind of work the same. We're going to actually be going for critical damage reduction, because that comes with armor as well, which is huge. You're also going to want to be looking for a little bit of leech, damage over time, void penetration, void damage, hammer throw damage, which is a Sentinel exclusive affix, and then throwing speed, throwing damage, vitality. I mean, it's kind of all, those are kind of all the super important stats. So if you wanted to make like a starter loot filter or something like that, you could throw those in there and kind of keep an eye out for those. Well, let's go ahead here and talk about each of the items that we have. So the way I'm going to do this is we're going to be bouncing between what I actually have equipped and the planner as well. And we're going to make comparisons and talk about what we can do for literally each slot of gear. Reminder, the timestamps are down below if you're looking for what piece of gear you should be looking for. So over on your helmet, if you're following my planner, this one's pretty much accurate. Now what you could do on this helmet is you could try to seal the hammer throw damage affix, or you could also try to seal the echo damage as well. Different options there. Over in game, let's peek at my helmet here. Mine's not perfect. I've gotten pretty terrible RNG, but we do have the vitality, the double health. Those are pretty much required. I mean, you gotta have as much health as possible. And then we have the echo. It's just that sealed affix on mine. So mine's actually not terrible. We would rather have the exalted void instead of vitality on this though. Over on the Ammy, I'll go ahead and show you mine. Mine is pretty off, actually. I think there's only 2 affixes on here that we actually really want here, the health and the throwing damage. Let me go ahead and jump to the planner and show you what I'm searching for. What you're going to be wanting to actually find on your Ammy is that increased void damage instead of mine that has mana. You want to increase void damage, that flat throwing damage, which remember applies at 200% effectiveness, your health, and then health stun avoidance. And then you can seal damage over time if you are lucky enough to be able to find such an item. And for our base item, we're looking for the Jade Ammy, and that's for your throwing attack speed. Over on the helmet, I think I missed the base item. This one is your Terror Crown, and this is that increased echo damage. Your Avoid Knight, all your abilities pretty much are always going to be echoing. It's really crazy, and that damage you can definitely tell when you get a bunch of hammers and stuff going. Over on the body armor, the base item you're going to be looking for, again, is that Apocalypse Plate. This is going to give you that echo damage. Now, the range on this is huge. It can roll as low as 13%, all the way up to 130%. So remember, when you're crafting, you can use a rune in here to re-roll. And actually, since it's implicit on the item, you'll have to use a rune of shaping, and that'll re-roll that echo damage range on there. Now, the affixes you're going to be looking for, mine's actually not terrible. We are missing the suffixes. We're missing double health rolls. So that's what I was talking about when I'm missing a bunch of health, and it's really screwing up my effective health. points significantly. If I could find a body armor with that, we would be pretty set with our health pool. But I'll go ahead and show you on the planner what it looks like here. So when it comes to what I'm aiming for, you want your vitality, your health, and then your increased health. And then your void damage over time is your exalted. You'd be okay with exalted vitality as well if you wanted to. And then you can seal off void damage. I think you can also seal off echo damage as well. If it were me, I'd probably go for the echo damage because I think it can roll a little bit higher. But again, just an option there for you to play around with and kind of whatever the game tosses at you, right? Now over on your belt, and mine again is terrible. Again, RNG's not been on my side. We do not want the necrotic damage or the dodge. But the base item we're going to be using is the poison resistance and cold resistance. And again, some of these items that I have that are way off, I feel like is really what's holding me back and keeping me in the 900 corruption range. But anyway, let's go ahead and jump to the planner here. On your belt, you're going to be looking for that spider silk, as I mentioned, for those resistances. Now, instead of this mana regen, you may actually want to go for cleansing, especially if you're going to be pushing Uber Aberoth. You will need a way to cleanse, so that would be better than your mana regen. Mana regen's not needed with our whole essence gimmick anyway, so there's probably way other better things you could grab in here as well. The other rolls you're going to be looking for is your hybrid health right here, which means that it has plus and increased health on it, hybrid health. Again, that's a pretty more rare affix. So I recommend you add that into your loot filter so you don't miss out on it. And then we're also going to get another health, and then you can seal off void damage if you want to. Or you could seal off that cleanse is another option you have. Now over on your rings, now you're going to have some options here when we start to talk about legendaries. You'll have some options here. But one of the rings you're going to want to get at least is going to have your throwing damage and your cost reduction, throwing attack speed, double health, and then physical resistance to get us to that cap on there. We can go ahead and peek at mine in game here. You can see right now I'm not even running a legendary, and we will talk about that here in a minute. But you can see on this one we have the cost reduction, the damage, the attack speed. One of the healths we're missing. Instead of endurance, we'd rather have health. And I think this is actually getting me to that endurance cap. I'm actually undercapped on endurance, so... And then over here, the elemental resistance was nice. But again, I'd rather have another health roll, and then you could seal off physical resistance or whatever. But yeah, it's pretty important to get the double health roll. It's going to help you out significantly. Let's go ahead and talk about boots. Mine are actually pretty decent here. I would have rather have the exalted be on vitality. But over on these, you're going to want your vitality, movement speed, health, hybrid health, and then you're going to want to seal off that crit damage reduction and armor mod there. And again, you don't have to seal that one. You could seal the health. It just kind of depends on your RNG and what the game tosses at you. But these boots actually might be my best non-legendary piece of gear. Now, over on gloves, now these are going to be another optional area, and we're going to talk about this again when we get to unique gloves. But right now, as you can see, I'm not even running unique, legendary, whatever. I actually have these ones here. The base item is not correct, but we do have our throwing attack speed, throwing damage, health, hybrid health. You can even seal off leech rate if you want to, and that'll help offset one of the unique rings we're going to talk about here, the Siphon of Anguish. But let's go ahead and jump into legendary items here. The very first one's going to be your scepter. This one's pretty good. So you're going to be using Aberoth's command. I pointed this out when we were talking about Void Cleave versus the Abyssal Echoes. But what you're going to want to be looking at on this item, especially when you find just the unique of it, is that void penetration and that damage over time. You're going to want to make sure those ranges are a little bit higher. You can see my void penetration is a little bit low, and I can go a little bit higher on the damage over time as well. But then when you're looking for a scepter to slam into there with your legendary crafting, you're going to want to have void damage on there and void penetration as well. And that's going to be a good 2 LP. And then when you get to 3 LP, which I still haven't even found, you could put literally any of the important stats in there that we've talked about already. Aberoth's command is a unique item, and it's actually found from one of the very first Harbingers. If you can't get your hands on Aberoth's command, I went ahead and made this builder right here for you. Basically, you're going to go for this sword right here. It is this base item right here, and it's going to give you increased damage over time. You can also put... This is from the set item, the Forgotten Knight, and this is going to give you void damage, and it up to 50% is decent. So literally you just get the set item, the Forgotten Knight, you go in and you shatter the set in the Bridge Woven Echo, and then you can just use it as a normal crafting shard when you craft. You can also get increased void damage, and then your void penetration as well. This is literally just going to be your placeholder until you can kill the first Harbinger, which shouldn't take you that long really anyway. Now over on your shield, we're going to be looking for the Bulwark of the Last Abyss. This one is target farmable as well. In the timelines, it's in the Fall of the Empire. You can see down here from the boss. But this is a really strong shield. So this is going to help you get to that block chance cap. You can see we have 3 rolls of block chance on this. The implicit has 35. The block chance, you can get 26. And then the just normal block chance, it's not a legendary mod, is up to 20%. You're also going to be wanting to look at your increased armor. But this thing does a pretty cool thing here. I'll go ahead and jump into the game and show you what I have on my shield. You can actually see I like rolled those stats like it's crazy that got me up to the block chance cap. It doesn't show right now because I'm standing in town, but if we actually go out into a combat zone, we'll immediately be at cap from our symbols of hope. So I went ahead and just jumped into here so you can see what I'm talking about here. We're actually over block chance. But anyway, back to the shield. The other thing this is going to do is it's going to give you a damage buff, an increased void damage buff. Now it's from the buff called Apocalypse. What's going to happen is every 3 seconds, if you're on high health, you lose 25% of your health and you gain this buff for 3 seconds. You can see we pretty much always have this up. It's right here. Now the issue with this, and with all our leech and stuff, we'll literally always have it up there. But the issue with this is it does take away a little bit of your health. So maybe that's partially why I'm dying a little bit, is I feel like sometimes I get on that high health and I get the Apocalypse and then I get hit by something else. But the damage buff is really nice. And you also got to have it to get the block chance cap as well. So I really didn't see any other option when it comes to your shield. Now, if you could get a 2 or 3 LP, you could add on block effectiveness, endurance, or health as well on there. And just haven't found any good rolls yet. Now, over on your ring, if you remember when I said that we have different options, and I actually have this over here in my testing tab. So this is the ring we're going to talk about here. This is the Siphon of Anguish. This item drops, I believe, from the Shade of Oribus when you're running through timelines. The 2 main things you're going to be looking at on Siphon of Anguish is going to be your void damage leached as health. I try to get at least 2% or higher, and then also the leech rate as well. I try to get as close to 30% as possible. But with a 3 LP, I just couldn't, switch it up. But this is an item that I ran for a long time. And then I realized that I really didn't need all that extra leech. And so you can see I've taken it off and I'm running these 2 now. But it's something to consider. And you can see on there, we also got our health roll. But if you're going to do the Siphon of Anguish route, what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to slam in the throwing damage and mana cost reduction. Those are required. That is required on rings for this build to work. That cost reduction is ultra important. And then also throwing attack speed. Those are the 2 you have to have on rings, is your throwing damage and mana cost reduction, and then throwing attack speed. You can see this ring, I don't have the throwing attack speed on, so I'm not following what I preach here. But that's what your siphon could look like. The health was just a nice bonus that I got on this 3 legendary potential ring. Now, another option you have here, you can see, is your gloves. And I mentioned this. Let's go ahead and just touch on it. So these are the legendary gloves, a trophy. Hopefully I'm saying that correctly. I have no idea. But this is going to give you void penetration for your damage over time. You can see it can roll up to 25% penetration, which from my understanding is huge in higher corruption. But I don't know. I really needed the extra health. So maybe if I could find a good 3 LP of these and get some health in there, maybe I'd go back to them. But what you're going to be looking at in your gloves, again, is your throwing damage and throwing attack speed are super important. Just an option you could take there, the time rot stuff, the slow stuff. We don't really care about that. It's literally just the penetration there. So do you want more health so you don't die, or do you want more penetration so you can kill stuff faster? You know what I mean? If you're dead, you can't deal damage. So anyway, over onto your relic. This one's pretty insane. I've actually found a couple good rolls of this one. This is the Code of an Erased Sentinel. When you very first find this, it's going to have Weaver's Will on there. Just pretend that this is a code right here. But this is all you do is you come in here and you do your Rune of Weaving, and then you weave it, and then hopefully yours rolls similar to mine. We do not want the crit chance on there. Again, that doesn't apply to the build. But that hammer throw rolling tier 7 almost max is just insane. So that's the highlight of this one. The poison resistance, the frailty, and the crit could be way better, but this one's great. Plus you get +1 to all your sentinel skills, the damage over time mitigation. It's just a great item. I wish you the best of luck when you're rolling your Code of an Erased Sentinel. I think that's all the main item slots. Let's go ahead here and just touch on the idols. So what you're going to want to be looking for here is the 2x2s. You're going to be looking for void damage for 4 seconds when a skill echoes. You're going to always be having skills echoing. You're always going to have that up. Mine rolled on the lower end here. You can roll up to 76 on that. I got 39. I think I have a higher one in here somewhere. But anyway, then the suffix you're going to be looking for on your 2x2 adorned idol is your void damage over time. Now, when you can enchant your idols now with the tombs and the cemeteries and stuff, what you're going to be looking on those enchantments is your armor, and then your damage over time, armor mitigation as well, and then damage over time and endurance. Endurance is a pretty important part of this build. Not as important as like leech and like, straight up, health and stuff like that, but it's kind of like just another layer that we have. So that's what you're going to be looking for on your 2x2s. The void damage on echo, void damage over time, armor mitigation, damage over time, and endurance. Now over on your 1x1s, you're going to be looking for damage over time as your prefix, and then less damage taken over time, and then physical resistance. And again, this is, the resistances is interchangeable for what you need for your build, but in order to get to that physical cap, I did in fact need that on there. So that's pretty much going to be what your idols are going to look like. Over on your blessings, you have a couple ones that are required. So over here on your void damage, which this is the one you get from the Black Sun, you can actually get void shred in here somewhere as well. I'm not really sure which one's better. If you know which one's, better, let me know in the comments, I guess. But, this thing can roll up to 100% void damage. I played with both. I didn't really test them as extensively as I have some of the other stuff. But yeah, just so you know that you can kind of pick and choose there, and maybe the game's only giving you shred, and then you can just use that until you get void damage or whatever. The other one that is required is to get all resistances down here. The other one over here is from Reign of Dragons, and this is going to be your all resistances. Down here from your Spirits of Fire, you're going to be looking for armor. And then this one is required as well. The Age of Winter, you need that block chance to get you up to that cap. Again, I'm not at 100% because I don't have a symbol up right now, what you do when you're in combat. Another one that's required to get us to that lightning cap here is the lightning resistance from Ending the Storm. And then, we want scepter drop rate, adorned idol drop rates. And honestly, those 2x2 idols I showed you are pretty freaking rare, man. So, like, you're going to want this. And I got it maxed out, which is pretty cool. I don't really know what my other ones are. I think they're not as important. Obviously, yeah, they're just kind of your random ones. But those are your required ones. Your void, damage, shred, your all res, armor, block chance, lightning resistance, and yeah, those are your blessings. Well, we've covered a lot in this build. Last thing I want to just mention real quick is my loot filter. We're not going to do a super in-depth thing here. I have like an extremely strict loot filter that perhaps I'll share. I've been posting them in the DMGCREW Discord. If you're on there, I'll have a link for that in the description below as well. But yeah, I'll probably just share this filter, and if I feel ambitious, maybe I'll make some less strict filters for this build as well. But this one, if you add this on, if you use this filter, when an item drops, it's pretty much going to be an upgrade right out of the gate. It's pretty good. It's literally the point where it's like, if I see an item drop, I get pretty freaking excited for it. That's my Void Hammer build that I've been working on overhauling for the past, week and a half or so. The very first Void Hammer build I put out, the feedback that I got, I want to thank you. If you commented on that video, if you're on the Hack and Slash Hub and you helped me refine this build, seriously, from the bottom of my heart, thank you. I almost just shelved this character and it was just done at 300 corruption. And through the process of pushing up to, what am I at, 926 corruption, I believe now, this is the most powerful build I've ever made. And I'm one of those players that I like to make my own builds, and I like to really challenge myself and learn. And I almost just missed out on that whole 600 extra corruption gap. And it's not just about the corruption, it's about what I learned about Last Epoch so that I can help make better and stronger Last Epoch builds in the future. So I seriously thank you so much for pushing me and really giving me the inspiration to pursue this build and push it to what I feel like is pretty close to the limit. I just wish I had better RNG so we could really find the true cap for this build's power. And that's going to wrap it up for this Last Epoch Void Hammer guide video. Hopefully you found this video useful and or entertaining. If so, don't forget that like button and subscribe to the channel if you think I've earned it. Please consider becoming a YouTube channel member today and unlock some pretty fun perks, such as behind the scenes, early access to videos when I release a whole big batch, and bloopers that I find while editing videos. But don't forget, your view alone means the absolute world. As always, thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.